Hey, I'm here with Matt Morris. He's the Sin City Coordinator for Kansas City, Missouri. And Matt and I are going to talk a little bit about the importance of legacy as a part of the Sin City strategy. Now, when we say legacy, we're talking about a strategy, an approach to deal with the tremendous numbers of churches that die every year. In Southern Baptist life, something like 1,000 churches cease to exist every year. And the vast majority of those are in metropolitan areas just like Kansas City. So in order to reduce the death rate, if we want to increase the net number of churches, we have to plant churches, which is what we're very focused in doing in Kansas City and other sin cities. But we also have to reduce the death rate. And so in reducing the death rate, we have some strategies that have been put forth that have proven to work to reduce the death rate of churches, these legacy strategies. And basically they fall into 5 basic categories. First one, we ask the church as it closes to give its property and resources to a Southern Baptist entity to be used for church planting. Second one is the church as it closes gives itself away to a stronger church in the region and it becomes a campus of that church. A third one is we find a new church that needs a home and the dying church and the new church, merge together. A fourth one is maybe they're not ready to merge, but the dying church has a lot of space, and so they'll allow a new church plant to share their building at no cost. And then the last one, the fifth one, is we actually bring in a church planter and we replant the church right there among the remaining people. Now, clearly, if we do that, the remaining group has to give up command and control, and there's other things they have to do. But those are sort of the 5 approaches to dealing with dying churches. In Kansas City, Matt has had a really good experience of having legacy as a central part of their Sin City strategy. So talk a little bit about how that came about and what it looks like here.
And on all 5 of those things you laid out, we have all 5 of those right now. As you're naming those off, I'm thinking around our city, those dots on our map, how really we have a combination of all those things going on. And I think really seeing it not as 2 separate things, church planting and legacy. They really go together because sometimes, as you said, it's a plant that needs a home, or it could be a dying church that is willing to merge with something. We had one not long ago, a church that was planted 2 or 3 years ago that was meeting somewhere else. There's a church down the road that was going to close the doors, and they merged even 2 or 3 years into the life of that new plant. And we've had them where the church has been. We have one where the church had closed the doors. There was one couple left that sort of maintained the entity of the church, but they hadn't met. They hadn't unlocked the door in months. And we got that one couple to say, let's unlock the door here, let this guy come in and plant. And that was kind of a hybrid of they let him, for a while, just have his plant meet in that building, and then eventually did merge. And so it's all different things. So it's not so cut and dry as there's 2 things and they're not well defined. So it's great having you here because we've been able to work together in those things like that, especially in Kansas City where we have the state line running right down the middle.
Right.
On the Kansas side, it's a pioneer area.
Right.
We have towns of maybe 10,000 people, no Southern Baptist Church at all. On the Missouri side, we have areas where there were once strong churches, and now there are not. And so really, when I look at the 30,000-foot view of Kansas City, we're really looking at if you're wanting to plant something brand new in an elementary school kind of thing, a lot of that's going on the Kansas side. The Missouri side, we're really looking at where are there buildings, where are there remnants, where there once were strong churches, and how do we partner with them to plant that congregation or replant in that community.
So as a Sin City coordinator, as a strategist for this region, you have to be aware of the health of the churches, all the churches, and particularly those churches we talk about that are within 2 to 5 years of closing. In other words, when we talk about legacy plants, we're talking about churches that if the current giving and attendance continues, they'll be out of business in 2 to 5 years. And as a strategist, you work with the people on the ground to identify those churches, and you know where they are. So when a guy's planting in that neighborhood, you can kind of begin to work on that. And when you talk about points on a map, Kansas City, I think, was one of the first Sin cities who actually put sort of points on the map of legacy plants. Now, you couldn't identify a church and say this one's going to die.
You get put on the website, this church is going to die in 2 years.
No, you can't. But what you did do was you took the city and divided it up into how many different regions? I forgot. You have it in several regions.
Well, we have 3 associations
Right.
that are part of our the boundaries of our city plan.
Right.
And there's 2 things that are very important. One is the city plan, putting those dots on there.
Right.
So when a guy says, I want to plant in Kansas City, we can look at that map together as a starting place. But having the directors of missions on the strategy team has been key.
Right.
Because they're the guys that know that. I'm looking at the whole city. I'm counting on those 3 guys to know the churches in their particular area that are going to be legacy sites, of course, potentially.
So on the map of Kansas City, what we did was we took sort of the general vicinity. We would say within this general vicinity on the map, we just put a dot and said we think there could be 3 legacy plants next year or the next 2 or 3 years in this general vicinity. We didn't get specific about the actual church location, but we said, for example, in the area of northeast Kansas City, there might be 3 legacy plants. The area of South Johnson County, there might be 2 legacy plants. So as you're working through the process of strategizing to plant churches in Kansas City, where the legacy plants are located or will be located are very much in your forefront of thinking and your strategy. So when vision tours come, talk about how you're able to talk with them about even legacy planting.
Right. I think the thing that we, particularly with planters who want to come to Kansas City, and it's so great that we're having this conversation. It's become such a wave of interest in legacy and revitalization. The thing that guys often miss is there aren't like a waiting list of churches that want this right now.
Right.
That's the thing that guys have to understand. Because I'll have a guy call me and they want to do legacy replant, and sometimes they have the impression that you or I have got 6 churches just wanting some young guy to come in and completely change them.
Right.
And you have to say, guys, if they wanted someone to come in and do something radically different, they probably wouldn't be dying now. And so you have to be very patient and very strategic and wise on how we kind of talk about those things. Some of those churches just aren't ready yet, but it's good to know. The other thing is, as you noted, they'll only, what I tell people is almost always the only time a church is interested in anything like this is when they run out of money. Mm-hmm. And so we do have some that we've even talked about where we say, this church would be awesome. They just have too much money in the bank.
Right.
And it may be years, but the rate they're going, it'll be met. That's when they get, I think it's my experience, I think yours as well. When they can't pay the bills anymore, that's when they come to their DOM or to you or to me, and that's when we can really begin to have that conversation.
But it's great that as a Sin City coordinator, you're able to talk about the North American Mission Board's strategy to reach the city, and for churches that come to you and say, hey, we're at the point of closure. We're nearly dead. What do you have for us? You can talk to them about these 5 approaches. Here's 5 strategies that the North American Mission Board has for churches that are near the point of closure that will guarantee to bless the legacy you had in the past and keep the legacy going in the future. And talk for a minute about how that's beginning to get some traction here in Kansas City.
I think a couple things. One, before I go to that, I would say you have to start the conversation with terms that they understand and they accept. And you never want to do a bait and switch on them or be deceptive. But you may not come in and open with legacy revitalization or something, replant, but rather to say to them, under certain circumstances and certain criteria, the North American Mission Board can help financially with your the expenses of your pastor. Mm-hmm. With that, you don't want to kind of hide the fact of what we're going to do, but you can open with something that's a little more open. We're out of money. We don't know what we're going to do for a pastor. The North American Mission Board can help. Tell me more about that, and then that's when you can lay out those 5 things.
So it's important as a strategist, as a Sin City coordinator, or a director of missions, for you to have that information in your toolkit. So when you sit down with the dying church, you've got some things you can lay out there for them.
But you have to start the conversation with terminology that's friendly to them, rather than, hey, I got an idea. Why don't you close it down and give us the keys? Clearly that's not your opener.
Right.
But to be able to say there are strategies, there are approaches, certain criteria where we can help, and let's if you're open to that at all, we want to lay those out for you. And so the only reason they're calling is because they're out of money typically, and if we can open with we might be able to help. Then they're open to it. Now, what you were saying, the sort of the wave that's happening, which is really cool, is we have some that have worked, and when other churches begin to notice that, specifically in Kansas City, 2 that come to my mind right away is Lenexa Baptist, what they've been able to do. in Greenwood, and then also in Bonner Springs now. Both
Right.
of those are doing very, very well. The other one, the most recent one, is New City, Shawnee, with New City Edgerton. New
Right.
City Shawnee planted about 3 years ago with Matt Miller. They're running 400 plus. And a church about 20 minutes away said, we're going to close the doors. They emerged. And what's incredible of that one, they had 6 senior adult people who have stuck with it. And I talked to the planter, Matt Miller, yesterday. He said these guys are in their 70s. And he said they're seeing some of the most exciting, fruitful times in all of their spiritual life. They said they're sharing the gospel more. Their faith is more vibrant. They're more excited about church than at any other time in their life. And that's really exciting to think that these 6 people were going to die in a dying church.
Right.
And now, because they have merged with New City Shawnee, it's now New City Edgerton, and it's thriving. They had a preview service last week, had 120 people at the preview service. And they're just thrilled. They're in tears to see kids running around again. They haven't seen a little kid run through that place in years. And when that happens and they begin to talk, other dying churches see that what's happening there, right. and they want to say, hey, we may want in on that also.
Awesome. That's great, Matt. Well, I appreciate your passion for planting churches and for replanting dying churches or repurposing those dying churches through legacy. So really, as a director of missions, as a strategist, as a Sin City coordinator, just to be aware of the health of some of these churches that are at the end of their lifespan, know where they are, know who the leaders are, develop a relationship with them, and understand how you might connect into some church plants, connect into some churches that want to do campuses, and be aware of the resources that the North American Mission Board has for legacy planting, and just make it a very central part of your overall church planting strategy. Has tremendous upside, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the main thing is don't see it as two things.
Okay.
We don't say you can call Matt if you want to plant a church or John Mark if you want to do revitalization, because there are so many variables and factors and hybrids, and as you say, 5 approaches. There's probably even subcategories within those 5.
Right.
It has to be a cohesive strategy. Send Kansas City is planting and replanting and increasing the birth rate, decreasing the death rates, all of that rolled into one thing. And
Awesome.
that's what we want people to see is who knows what it's going to look like as we take this journey. So we have to be kind of walking on that path together. It's very important that directors of missions, city coordinators, whoever's doing legacy stuff in this city, that we're all around the same table having that conversation.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it very much,
Yeah,
man.
no
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you, John Mark.
Like working with you.